All right, hey everybody, welcome back. Sorry we're a little bit late getting going this morning. I'm here with my buddy Dwayne, and so this is Dwayne Coyawena, and he is Hopi. And so the reason I'm telling you that is because the idea for this cloud picture came from Dwayne. He brought this canvas to me and he said, "Hey, I got an idea. You want to collaborate on a picture?" So I'm going to let Dwayne take just a second and tell you about that. Actually, Dwayne, why don't you scoot up a little bit so everyone can see your handsome face? We'll get you in the light a little bit better.
Cool.
And so just give us a quick rundown on your vision for the picture. It doesn't have to be anything deep, but just tell us what you're thinking, because that is the reason we're doing this.
Well, first and foremost, I really admire Joe's paintings. Big fan, big inspiration. And I do know that he really gets down on clouds. They're amazing. I've seen his work all over. So I thought, man, if we could get a collaboration with some clouds and Hopi clouds, and those cumulus clouds are very significant to the land, bringing the rain. So I wanted to get some of his amazing clouds in here. And after he's done, he's going to hand the piece off to me, and I'm going to put some what we call angaktinas, which are long-haired kachinas. They are rain messengers. So I wanted to kind of tuck them in the back, or maybe just one nice significant one with some rain on the bottom. But I think it will be really a strong piece and something nice.
We had some comments about there needs to be something in the clouds. Would be fun. So I'm glad that it's getting set up for that. So yeah. Are you thinking like some in the background, some in the foreground? Are you thinking different depths? Or are you thinking just one kind of mysterious?
I'm still thinking of like maybe some in the like in depth, like up front, but I'm looking at this open spot, but like maybe even one just kind of almost like walking through the clouds coming forward at us.
That'd be
so yeah, I think something like that would be pretty neat.
Okay, nice. Well, Dwayne is going to fill in for my brother Ben here. Ben is celebrating his birthday.
Yeah.
I feel kind of bad that I don't know what birthday. How old is my brother Ben?
21.
He must be 40. Maybe that's why he went all the way to Mexico. He must have turned 40. So while he's celebrating away from internet signals, Dwayne's going to fill in and be reading all of your comments. Really appreciate you all being a part of the conversation, tuning in. I rely on your questions and also letting us know if anything doesn't look quite right. As I've said on all of the previous recordings, we want this recorded and to be a good resource for people learning to paint this kind of content in the future. So your questions and comments are very valuable to help develop that and make sure that we have the best quality possible. So we're going to see if we can still do the segment at the end of the show where some of you send in things that you're working on. Now, you might have to be patient, bear with us, because Ben is pretty computer savvy and we are maybe not quite as much. Dwayne is just walking into my studio with my stuff laying around, and I am just not that quick like my brother Ben. But I think we might be able to manage it. So if you want to send paintings to info@muraljoe.com, then that is where we will open up the email, look at the pictures that you send. If you have a brief comment, question, something you want specifically talked about, that painting that you send, then we can address that. We'll be able to read that and see. So Dwayne's going to be keeping an eye on all of that on the computer over here. You'll hear him in the background of our studio while I'm painting. So Dwayne,
right.
Dwayne, I'm trying to say thanks and Dwayne at the same time. Thanks for the intro.
No problem.
Dwayne, thanks for this great idea. It's really because of you that we're doing this, and it seems to be a very well-liked series. So
yeah, thanks for going up on this. So I'm pretty excited.
All right, cool. Now we have Brian on the cameras. Brian, you can give a quick hello.
Hello.
He always comes in here. He's such a good friend. He just likes to come in here and volunteer the time. So that's what I call a good friend. He's always giving his time to me, helping out with things. And so he's operating the cameras. You can let us know in the comments if something looks too bright, if it looks too dark. I really want you to be able to see details of the work and the technique. as we're progressing. So go ahead and just let us know whatever you see. So where we left off, I was continuing to build the composition here. And so now I'm starting to get to a point when I might think about adding some clouds that have atmosphere mixed in with them, where I'm using the sky color to make even more distant clouds, and then maybe even adding some darker colors to make clouds come forward. So maybe I'll add just a touch of black to some of these shadows. We'll see as I progress what that looks like, and then I'll just judge if I need to adjust that color. But that's my thinking right here at the beginning. I want to get the lower clouds finished off, get the composition done, and then we'll move to fine tuning the layers and getting maximized depth. Something I always love to do in every picture. So if you want to take the time, let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always fun to see who is watching from where. So go ahead and do that at any time if you want to. I'm going to start painting. Down here, we need a lot of clouds going back. So I started here. I have these clouds. I think I actually left off way up here in the corner doing those big ones. And these I'm imagining being on the same layer. I want a layer to come up and then start breaking apart, and we're seeing through it like a window. So go up there. That's my vision for these clouds. So let's see if I can put it together real quick. We're going to put highlight. And so this is getting down lower. I'm thinking as I start putting clouds in this area that I might consider going darker on everything, because it is not as high altitude. The sun is probably starting to go down. And so some of these may not be as bright where they're down lower. So maybe just for effect, I'll make these lower clouds not quite, just a little difference, tiny difference at the lower altitude. Maybe I'll use more of the mid-tone, the color I call the transition color. So that's this one here. I call this the transition color because it's what blends my shadow and light together and restores the color that gets removed from what would be natural light when the paint mixes. So paint mixes, I talk about it all the time, but I figure you can't say something too much when it's a very helpful truth about painting and color. We don't get the same results when we mix paint that we do light. When light mixes, such as in the natural world around you, or like on a TV or computer screen, the results are not the same as you get when you mix paint, and that's because color is lost in the piling up, overlapping, mixing nature of paint. It's not just a side-by-side display of lights. So when they lay on top of each other, all the tiny particles, they end up removing color. And that's, I'm not trying to sound overly scientific, just trying to just give you the picture of what's happening. So we're losing color. Colors are destroying other colors when you mix them because of the overlapping and the way they shine through each other and reflect the light. So we have to restore it. Wherever there's mixing, if we want it to resemble natural light, we got to think about restoring it. And that's why you put a color like this between that light and shadow. It's restoring what got removed when the paint mixed. And particles are laying on top of particles, kind of filtering them out. Now, there's another thing going on. That kind of goes for everything that you want to resemble natural light and shadow. But with clouds, there's something else going on. We have translucency, and it seems to amplify the effect of color in that transition. When the color from the bright part of the cloud is bleeding in and shining out of the shadows, you get all this color in here. That's translucency. So boosting up the color in that transition. So we have, that's the second reason that it ends up working well, to put all this color between light and shadow. So now I can put a layer since I kind of lost track of where my clouds were sitting in this composition. I had all these clouds I sketched out at the beginning. And so what I'm going to do is just use a technique to very quickly layer shadow, light, shadow, light, shadow, light. So here's what you can do. If you want to try that, you just do horizontal lines of, you can go whatever color you want, horizontal lines of one of the colors. And then I'm going to do horizontal lines of the transition. So now we're going to go like this, put it anywhere that I want to create a hole in the clouds shining where light is shining through.
On that note, Joe,
yeah,
we got a question from Alan wondering where your son is in the painting.
Oh yeah, okay, very good. Now that reminds me also to let any of you know that weren't watching the previous lesson, the previous episodes of this, that this is a multi-part series. So just in case you didn't know that, you can see those previous recordings by going to muraljoe.com. If you subscribe, then you'll be able to have access to those. They were pulled for editing because this is meant to be a package that I'm going to sell in the future. Once we have it all recorded, we have it all edited, I'm going to sell this on my website. But I want to answer your question right now. And so the sun is coming from my back and it would be shining right on these clouds. But do you see how I have this cast shadow on the edge of this? That was kind of a last minute decision in the previous video. So I had planned the whole time the sun's at my back, and I think I originally said, well, it's going to shine over my left shoulder and come this way on the painting. Then as I built the clouds, I thought, well, it's starting to look more, it's just starting to look better if I put the light coming over my right shoulder. So I just made a slight change of decision. So mostly from behind me, shining on the face of these clouds, but coming somewhat from the side in order to get some interesting light and shadow. I just don't love the look of it going directly on the face of the clouds. It's more difficult for me to create depth with it that way. So then the next color, so I'm going to identify where I've already put the transition color, and then I'll just put this light color in there. And it's how I make my gradients from here that really makes the difference. So this is just a little bit of light peeking through from above. It doesn't have to be super bright. So I can blend this color out. I put it above where I already have transition color blended. And it's going to be a relatively hard edge on the top. It's going to be blended more on the bottom edge of that light highlight. And what that does is it creates a gradual bending of the shape of the cloud coming out from behind a cloud in front of it. So it's just a trick with gradients to get that look. So if I do this all over, I'm just going to drag my brush across. And since the paint is kind of tacking up, starting to dry, it doesn't just smear everywhere. It just gets blended when I do that drag across the whole surface. So you can see that my edges on the top of that highlight color that I put down are a bit sharper than the edges that I blended downward. Now, while I was talking, it started drying, so I'm just going to do more. So let's try some of the transition color. I'll put some water. It's always good to have that water handy because the paint moves fast, and I like to be able to get work done fast. So
we got a lot of people from all over. Just figured
nice.
Want to share with you. You got Kelly from Virginia.
Sweet Virginia, beautiful state. I got to go to Virginia.
We got Quebec in the house.
Quebec, nice. All right.
British Columbia, Leanne.
Oh man.
Wow, we got some places out here.
Man, I'm so jealous that. Well, I shouldn't say jealous. I always imagine being able to go visit those places. Maybe someday.
We got India also.
India, all the way from India. Cool.
That's
cool. Fantastic. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know that you're not in the same time zones, so I really appreciate you tuning in at maybe a less than ideal time of night, time of day. So thanks a lot. I'm really honored that you would tune in and be part. Okay, so now I did the light colors. So now I'm going to go opposite. Same concept, but I'm just reversing the order. So just like my bright colors, I blended the lower edge of all of my bright highlights. So I'm going to do the opposite with any shadows. So shadow goes under the bright colors. Anywhere I want, just put shadow under it somewhere. They can be in little patches. It can be in long stripes. And as long as I am sure to blend the top of it upward. Now, the top edge of any dark patch is what I'm talking about. It helps to be mindful of the shape too. Remember, this is the underside of a three-dimensional cloud, so making it bow slightly downward on each of these is probably a more believable shape than doing like a frown shape or a rainbow shape. That one might be a little bit harder to make sense of at a glance. So to get real believable shapes on these clouds, I put those shadows on, I blend the top edge of that shadow, and that quickly, it just creates layers of clouds going back. And so I can do this over and over and create very complex layers of clouds. Or maybe I should say a very complex layer with many clouds going back. And so I'll put dark spots in between the existing ones, to break it up, put more shapes in there, make it look bigger. It helps with scale. If you're trying to make something go back further and further, you might consider putting more shapes altogether in it.
What would be a tip on the blending process? Because I know for
Oh,
myself,
good.
a lot of people always have questions on pressure and blending and
Yeah, okay, very good. Dwayne is quite the painter himself. So if you have any opinions on this, you just chime in at any moment, Dwayne. But my strategy on blending is apply first, get the colors in place, and after I have enough paint on the canvas, that's when I blend. So that's my general workflow. It's not that I don't break it sometimes. So the distance I stay from the canvas also is a big deal. So I like to keep the brush at a distance where the bristles bend. I don't, if you were to estimate the middle of the bend on the bristles, maybe I'm making them bend halfway if there is such a thing. So this brush, I'm not putting it too far on. My pressure makes a difference in the blending. So it's not too light, it's not too hard. I'm trying to find the balance, like sweeping a floor. So I apply and I keep the paint on the heavy side when I know I'm not ready to blend it. So I don't come in here and brush this too many times. I'm actually judging the thickness of that paint that I just put on. It's not just random. So then I put this highlight on there. I brush over it a few times, but I chose to stop at a point when it's still thick. It's still heavy enough. It's going to blend when I hit it with another color. Then I put the shadow under it. So I'm done applying. I've got all my three colors for blending. So now I'm going to do my final blending pass. And so I typically put more pressure on one side of the brush than the other. So I'll put more pressure on the upper corner as I do a left stroke in the, to the left. And what that'll do is it'll blend right on this line. So when I go like this, it blends right on that line. And then I'll go back and I'll pull the handle of the brush the other way and it'll blend it again. So this is not telling you the right way to blend this. I just want you to be real clear on what you're seeing me do so that you can, just have the information, do what you want with it. Maybe you'll find other methods, but this is my go-to method. It's usually putting more pressure on one corner of the brush than the other, and I just experiment. Sometimes I get a real crooked brush, and so I just change it up. I say, well, maybe it'll work better if I put more pressure on this corner, and then I don't like it, so I move to this corner. Experiment with putting a little more pressure by changing the angle of the handle, and then doing it like you're sweeping a floor. Don't lay it down too much. And like I say, over and over again, I want to encourage you, if you're new to painting and you're finding it to be awkward, it's a motor skill that definitely improves with repetition. You get so much more comfortable with that distance from the canvas as you spend more time behind the brush. So when you're first doing it, it's hard to manipulate the paint. You're thinking about the brush. You're trying to put the brush in the right place. You're multitasking. Don't worry about it. It's a struggle everybody goes through when you're just trying to learn the mechanics of your painting techniques. And it gets so much more automated as you spend time doing it. So what you see, when you see me moving quickly, you're seeing, years worth of automated practice. Just doing.
Keep at it.
Yep, I'm using that same
practicing.
distance from the canvas. I've got it locked in. I know where my personal comfort zone is on how I like to do it. That's how I blend it. Okay, putting little shapes in here. So I'm getting further away as I get lower in the picture. And as we get further away, I want smaller shapes. So I'm going to do that. And I also want diversity. I don't want all the same kind of shapes in here. So I'm going to put these smaller shapes in here. Sometimes you can get that gradient with just a single stroke. Just like I said, putting more pressure on one corner. If I want the top edge to be more blended than the bottom edge, I put more pressure on the top corner. So I've got the handle this way, and to create that gradient here, I'll do it again. We'll put more of the highlight down, and I'm going to put shadows over the top of this somewhere. Let's just blend this together. I'm going to look for my spots that have the most red. I'll put shadow in there, but my brush has this much paint on it. I'm going to aim down like this and put more pressure on this corner so that the top edge right off the brush has a softer blend than the bottom edge. See that? How the top is immediately right out of the gun. Just shoot them on there. See, and then I've immediately got my depth, my three-dimensional overlapping texture. And then it's a minimal amount of work to come in and lightly stroke across those upper edges of that shadow if I want to blend them more. It might be good enough right there, but you work it as much as you see fit. Now I'm just lightly going over it as it's getting more tacky, just lightly going over this to get a softer look to those clouds. I'm going to go down here and do more of those so you can see a texture starting to develop. What it's missing is the completion of the front where it opens up and I have that hole like we're looking up. So I'm going to skip up here for a little bit and build an edge that ties these together. So here's the front edge. I want to tie this so it goes down here and around. So I'm thinking that I want to see some shadow here, and that will help this to disappear. We'll put some of the mid-tone color transition in there.
Just share a little comment while you're working on that part, Joe.
Go ahead.
We got Maggie here from London.
Nice.
She said, "Hooray, last time I tried to paint clouds, they looked like whales. I hope to get some tips from watching you today."
All right, sweet. Thank you, Maggie, for saying that. Thank you. That's funny because I was just looking at whales. I went on a trip to Oregon. It was amazing. And I wish I could have visited all of you who are out there in Oregon, but time is so short. We were rushing around like crazy people, trying to visit with my brother who lives up there, trying to get things done. So we hit a few tourist attractions, hit some beautiful beaches. I am amazed. Those of you that live in the Northwest, man, is it beautiful. It's just mind-blowing beauty up there. So we saw whales off the coast. First time I've seen that. And I don't think a whale is the worst thing a cloud can look like. I think I've seen a lot of clouds that look like whales. I would say the important thing about a cloud, more than is the shape makes a difference. There's believable shapes and there's less believable shapes. But I think what really makes a difference is how you add the light and the shadow to that shape so that so that they tell the same story. They're, so that it seems like a believable cloud that is that shape. After all, we've all seen some strange shaped clouds, but they did not cease to look like real clouds. They just looked like strange ones. You see strange things out there, and it's kind of fun to use that in artwork, instead of always the stereotypical run-of-the-mill pretty puffy cloud. That's something that I always struggle with, really. And I fall in love with the natural shape of a cloud, and then next thing I know, it's the only thing I'm painting, and I struggle with getting believable diversity into the shapes.
Maybe you should do a painting with just whale clouds.
Just whale clouds swimming
in the sky of ocean.
It seems like I saw art by Andrea. Is a good artist to check out? Probably a lot of you are familiar with Andrea. I can't remember the last name, but the website is Art by Andrea, and she does a lot of really fantastic fantasy cloud paintings that I really like. And I think I've seen some with some whales swimming through the clouds. It's a really, really fun concept. I don't know why those fit together, but they do seem to fit together for a great composition.
We got a good comment here about clouds. For smooth blends, do you use thick paint or do you add more water to the paint?
Well, just now, as you said that, I did dip in the water. House paint. I'm using paint that you paint a wall with. It could be the paint out of tubes. I've got paint in tubes laying around my studio, and so that maybe is not quite as watery, but it depends from one can to another. If it's been sitting for a while, it can be thicker. But compared to oils, this water-based paint flows very quickly. And so it is difficult to blend paint that has a heavy viscosity. That for me has always been a struggle. So I like to keep it at a viscosity that when I do it, for example, the only reason that this brush stroke is possible to just go like this and do a brush stroke that is 12 inches long. A lot of you are on metric, so 10, 12, 100. Wait, how many centimeters? I'm a dummy. So anyway, this long. So to do that, the viscosity of it is pretty thin. 1 second, that's my phone buzzing there. We got somebody trying to sell me something.
Yeah. Thank you guys for all the comments. It's pretty good. Good questions.
I forgot to silence my phone while we were doing this, so let's make sure we do that. What would be funny is to just put them live on this show. It's probably just someone trying to sell me your vehicle warranty has expired. You need to act now. It's one of those things. So the blending is a good question. That is definitely a frequent issue. And so there is an ideal viscosity to it that I like to use. And so the other thing, since I know that blending is a struggle, speed. So when you're first learning things, use lots of water, give yourself time, but just accept that things don't come out as well when you have to move super slow. When you're working with water base, you can do a great picture without even blending. You can just block out the colors and just get a different look. But I just want you to know that as you increase speed, you also increase the smoothness of your blending. So I work quickly because every time I put that paint on the canvas, it's the clock is ticking to get it blended softly. So I get this blend done as quickly as I can, not just because I want to get the painting done, but because I'll run out of time to get the same soft effect with the blending. So going fast, I say it with that tone of voice because I know that is not the answer many people are looking for. An artist doesn't want to hear go faster. You don't want to hear that, and you don't have to, but it is the truth about the ease that I have with blending. It is largely from the speed that I use.
Hey, Joe, just in case we have anybody joining for the first time, do you want me to pan in on the 4 colors you're using?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we got we got our materials down here. And so the colors I'm working from back and forth, we went over them in the earlier videos. And so I've got shadow, I've got my midtone, I've got my highlight. And I often call this, when I'm doing clouds, transition color. And I purposely make it very red in comparison with the other colors in order to get the look of translucent clouds. Shadow, transition color, highlight. This is the sky. And that's what I'll use to mix with the clouds when I start to do the clouds in the far distance. Maybe I'll mix some of that in there with them.
We got some questions on difficulty, like how do you get to this level to where you know how these clouds look, and I guess how you're comfortable painting these nice cumulus clouds. Like what got you there?
Right. Okay. Thank you for asking that. And I think the honest answer is obsession. The amount of time that I spend staring, I think the most truthful answer is more in the studying, more in the standing and staring and observing than it is in the painting. So painting is super important. That is a big ingredient in building that proficiency. But first, I have to have the information to develop goals. So I go to my canvas with the goal, and I'm constantly trying to develop more. I never reach the top, you know, of where I would like to be. I'm always disappointed. I'm always disappointed with my limits, and I'm always trying to increase them. So I stand and I stare. I'm just obsessed with the patterns in nature. And it's even to the point where I think it can be annoying to the company that I'm with, because, you know, while some people are just enjoying the beauty for what it is, you know, it's kind of like listening to somebody that's just way too much into all the little tiny parts of music, and you're just enjoying the song, and they want to have a scientific conversation about it. You know, it's like, hey, how about we just enjoy it? And so I'm that guy with clouds, and that doesn't mean that you have to be that guy in order to paint nice clouds. That's how I got there. But I think that if you like what you see me doing, and if it rings true, then that's my place in the world. I'm the guy that's obsessed and goes and finds the answers. You can be the person that paints the masterpiece. And that really is my greatest hope, is that I like to find the answers to the riddles. I like to study the cloud and figure out what makes it what it is, the leaf, the water, all kinds of things we see in nature. I'm mesmerized by the beauty. I'm just taken by it. And I like to study it and find out what makes it what it is visually. And that's how I got to this point, was by having knowledge of what elements are needed visually in order to achieve the perception of a cloud or whatever the subject is. So here I'm just jabbing at it, trying to complete my canvas, getting the shadows in there. So I'm starting to get some completion here, where these clouds are, where we can see the face of these clouds coming out in front of these further clouds. So here is where I might think about some strategy to get this. So do you see how this shadow is just like this shadow, but really this one would be closer. So to further separate these layers, I think what I need to do is start adding my atmosphere color. So this sky, this is the color I use to paint all this blue sky. I'm going to start putting that in this area. So I'm not going to spend so much time doing as much detail as I would if I were off camera doing this painting for some other purpose, because you're going to get the point way before I get all the details in there. And so I don't want to just belabor a small area of a painting on video. So I'm working loosely, and I'm not doing a lot of the tighter details, but as I'm developing this color, I want you to see how much impact it has just getting the colors dialed in. without even needing the tight details. So I want to be careful not to go too much. This is a little, a little bit of blue added, not a lot. So
We got a comment from Aaron saying that he noticed that blending on canvas is a lot different than blending on walls.
oh, I agree, for
Yeah.
sure.
What's your take on that, Joe?
Well, canvas can be real diverse. Give me just a second here. It can be real diverse in its texture because you might be painting on a canvas that has a lot of some primer on it, like gesso or wall primer. I just use wall primer. And you might be painting on one that has heavy coats of paint or not heavy coats of paint. It might have a lot of texture or not. And so I think texture is what we're talking about, painting on different textures. A wall can often just be a smooth, non-porous texture, and the paint just zips right across it. And so that's probably what you're talking about. And that is quite convenient. When I get on a smooth wall for a big mural, that's the best. I can work quickly. I can get the job done way faster. And then when I'm on a wall that has a lot of texture, sometimes I have to discuss a plan with my client to smooth out the texture, because by the time I get to the end of that painting, I will have spent a large percentage more on the time than I would if I just make the wall smooth first. I can actually save a lot of time by floating. We call it, for those of you that aren't familiar already with drywall or wall texture terms, you float the wall. That means make it smooth with drywall mud or plaster of some sort, make it smooth. So I've done that quite a few times on murals in order to save time. So the smoothness of the surface does make a difference. So now you can see that this looks like it's back in the atmosphere. Now I added that sky color, and so we have this haze. So this compared to this, I think for me right here, I'm looking at it real big and I don't see them at the same time, but hopefully when someone's backing up, perhaps more like you are, because you can see the whole picture. But the difference between this and this immediately creates depth. We have atmosphere that is established here, added here, in order to push this further back than this. So thinking that through really helps me to strategically or intentionally put clouds where I want them to be. So now I've got that shadow. Why don't I make an even further shadow? So now I'll put a lot of atmosphere right here, and I'll start putting my shadow right in here. Now you can see my ratio of sky color to shadow is quite a bit heavier on this far edge than it is as I get over in here. And so that'll cause this cloud to go back, and not just go sideways. So then I can do the same thing with my other colors. I can add the atmosphere to my bright colors as well, but I don't know that it really makes that big of a difference. Maybe it does, but I find that shadows are way bigger difference makers when it comes to being changed by atmosphere. Shadows get changed by atmosphere very, very extremely in comparison to bright colors. So things that are a light source, they're putting more light in the mix. The shadow's not putting anything in the mix. It's just taking on the color of whatever light is shining over the top of it. So here you can see that my highlight mixed with all that atmosphere regardless as I was blending it. And so it worked out pretty well. It looks very distant because of that. My bright highlight is more of a blue gray. It looks like it's not catching as much of the more extreme colors. I'll just put a little dot of it here since I've got that, make it popping through this hole in the cloud.
Do you ever use transparent fluid for your blending?
I haven't. I heard that is a really helpful trick. I need to retract that, because I'm thinking of that in terms of a clear medium on a canvas. But actually, that would be very similar to what I've done in a lot of murals. And I actually did use a ultra deep paint base, or a what a lot of people might just call a faux glaze, just a transparent paint that you put pigment in to get special effects. I have used that in order to blend colors over the top of other colors. I think it's a fantastic technique, and trial and error will get you to where you're trying to be. You know, I never did find just exactly what I was going to use for what situation. I didn't experiment enough with it, but I did find that to be very helpful in circumstances when I was getting too much texture, too much graininess, and my blending, adding that clear medium allowed me to get softer blending across in settings where I was doing layers. So when I'm doing a light color on top of a dry, dark layer, using a clear medium was very helpful. I used it for that.
On that note, Joe, there's another question. Sometimes I tend to build up too much texture. Paint on the canvas when working on a certain area. How do you manage this problem?
Oh, yeah. I don't have a simple solution for that. It is multitasking, and I run into the same problem. I'm sure you could find areas, if you really were searching for it, I'm sure you could find a lot of areas on my paintings, on my murals, that I left a spot too long where I was mixing up colors, and it does make texture. But it's a good tip for anybody else who has yet to cross that bridge, run into that problem. Being mindful of places that you put paint there. There's always a ticking clock, you know, and I think that it really pays off to think about where you've got paint that hasn't been mixed. If you're like me and you like bouncing around and you like borrowing some paint here and then working over here, you can lose track. Then you got a big blob of texture there that you didn't plan. It happens to me too. Sorry, I don't have an easy solution for that except for don't forget. But I do relate.
Where is it that they can go to send stuff to your email, Joe?
info@muraljoe.com. info@muraljoe.com. And so if you send a picture to that, you can do that at any time. I don't know how many we can get to, but we will do our best. We'll do our best to see what you guys have been working on. I love it. I love seeing paintings that are out there. And so we can open up the window. I'll share the screen of my computer, and we'll do our best to take a look at those. You know what I'm doing? I'm wandering around right now because I need to grab my little step ladder so I can get higher on this paint.
Got a question from Mary real quick.
Oh, good.
Mary said, could you ask Joe how many base coats he would recommend to make a white canvas smooth?
I'll tell you a good trick for that. You can use less coats. I don't know how many coats because that depends on what kind of paint you're using. My head's cut up there. What kind of paint you're using, how much it shrinks, that's the variable. But if you trowel the paint on, don't trowel texture or mud on, just trowel paint on. I do that to prime so many of my canvases. I just take a trowel like this one. I'm going to show you. Because this is a great question that I don't know. I think you might see this, but you can also get really cool textures using a trowel. So let's say that these are giant globs with a really big brush. So we'll have Brian zoom in a little bit on this spot so you can see. And what we'll do is use the trowel instead of the brush. And what happens when you do it, now make sure when you get a trowel, it's typical for one side, if it's a nicer one, to be bowed a little bit. So this is bowed this way. That keeps the corners from scratching into my canvas. And so I'll make sure I use that side of it. I might have bent that myself. So you use a trowel and it smooths into the low spots without depositing it on the high spots. It scrapes it off of the high spots and into the low spots. You'll use less paint. You'll be more efficient. You'll get a smooth canvas faster if you trowel the paint instead of brush the paint. It's a really great trick that I still use all the time.
Nice.
So now I'm going to blend this and create. It'd be fun to, you know, I've seen tons of oil painters do palette knife painting. Same concept, really. They're just not trying to get a perfectly smooth canvas, but same concept, using the edge of the knife instead of the brush to scrape the paint along.
We've got a very good question right here.
Okay, what's that?
I want your haircut. What do I tell my barber to get something similar?
That's awesome. Thanks. Thanks. Well, my haircut here, what camera are we on? You can see this is a good camera right here. Okay. It's just shaved on both sides. That's all it is. Just shaved straight on both sides, nothing fancy. And then okay, you're gonna make fun of me now. I cut it myself. And so I just go all one direction, just all this direction. I got tired of haircuts I couldn't manage, so I just started doing this one. I used to have dreadlocks. Okay, so you go all this way. My hair is kind of wavy and thick when it starts growing, so I cut this side shorter than this side. See, I answer any question. There you go.
Forget the Mural Joe
But I want to say
tutorials. Let's just do hair tutorials.
Thank you for the compliment on my hair. Thank you. That makes me feel better than I should about the way I look. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, now I'm going to put a little bit of highlight. I want to remind you that I added atmosphere to this top to make it look further away because it's high. This cloud was way up. So now I'm going to add my mid-tone. I'm going to add my highlight right here. And we're going to get a lighter cloud that goes all the way off this edge. Once this is completed and goes up off this edge, it's you know, I just love filling in backgrounds after a foreground has been decided. And I like to step back and it's like, you know, putting a bow on a present, making it look nice. It's that little final touch, complete the edges. There's no distractions. It's eliminating a distraction from the final picture. So I get real excited about those little corners that finally get filled up. What, you making fun of me over there? What's going on?
Oh man, they're asking where can we see Mural Joe with dreads?
Oh man. Oh man, I don't know. I think that there used to be a picture on my website. I think I pulled it off. I'd have to dig those out. They're in my house.
Days.
Yeah, Brian was there. It was just like this, same hairdo, but just with dreads instead of combed. Same cut, shaved on the side. See my hair, you know, it's out of control. I'm always trying to find ways to make it maintenance free.
Compliments on the realistic skills that you're sharing with everybody.
Hey, all right, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. But, you know, I get a way bigger thrill out of knowing that it's getting watched than for being able to do it myself. So thank you for taking the time to say that nice compliment. I appreciate it. Okay. So I've got that completed. I've got these clouds here. Now, another thing that I should mention, this just comes to mind as I'm working up here. A gradient behind a continuous sharp edge, super effective for creating depth. So if you want an object to really pop forward, if you got an object that you want to jump forward and the background go back, think of gradient that has a sharp edge cutting through it. So if I were to just put any sharp brush stroke unblended across a gradient, that brush stroke will jump forward. So a sharp edge in front of a gradient. That's what this has. And so you may not immediately identify that looking at a picture, but it's very distinct, very consistent pattern. Whenever that happens, you get depth. The gradient goes back, the sharp edge that cuts through it jumps forward. And so I've got that going with this cloud. I've got this soft gradient and it continues while this stops it all along that edge there. So it's a great way to get these clouds to jump forward. But now what I have a little bit of a conflict here. This I need to look like this is in front of this, and this goes up and behind. So what I'm going to do is put some of my similar colored highlights coming up on the other side of this so that hopefully it makes a visual connection, ties that together so that it looks like the cloud continues behind. So whenever I have shadow color already established, I just go right to that transition, because I've got to transition it to the highlight, not just add the highlight, but transition it to the highlight. Then I put the bright color. That's my bright highlight. I'll put that there. And hopefully this will do the trick to look like the cloud behind this one. And I might have to choose which edge is darker and which is lighter. Sometimes it's just a choice when you have similar values. So this cloud could run right into this cloud and you may not know which is which. So I just have to choose which one am I going to make darker. So what I'll do, since this is a common thing to run into, is a darker edge on clouds. These puffy clouds, they all the time, they have a slightly darker edge as they wrap around away from your eye. So I'll make this edge to this cloud just a little bit darker in order to make these stand apart, and put this cloud coming up behind this one. Just adding color. I'm not worrying way up here on the corner of the canvas. I'm not going to kill a bunch of time trying to do all my little puffy details, but I am going to try to dial these colors in just right to get the look that I'm after. So I need it to be a touch lighter so that these really are set apart. Here's my transition color, and I'm putting that in just because I see this turning kind of gray where the highlight meets the shadow. So I just go right to that.
You kind of just lay the base out of the cloud and then come back and start adding those highlight details. Is that what you're doing, Joe?
That's what I did on this one. That's it. I put the base on there, but that's not the way I always do it. It felt like it made sense on this one. And so that's just what seemed like the easiest path for this. And this is real low detail. You know, whenever I'm just not too concerned about exact details, it is fun to just put a bunch of shadow on and then splat it with some highlights and just see what shapes come out. Okay, so do you see how this is still soft gradient, so it still goes back along these sharper edges, and it's still drying too. This is going to get darker so that it doesn't have this outline effect. That outline effect happens when this is dry, but this is not, hopefully. So then this continuing past, that little blend was strategically just to get this cloud to continue up behind so that this is recognized as a closer cloud coming over the top. And I could probably accomplish that even better. See this? This is interference. I'm calling interference on this. That's a sharp edge that's jumping forward and scrambling my seam that has this continuous cloud. So being able to identify those things comes from knowing the patterns. Know the patterns. So the pattern is soft gradient behind sharp edges creates depth. Well, I'm seeing this real distinct color change that creates an edge that's interfering. So I'm going to go like this. Shadow. I'm going to get rid of some excess paint. This is a small area. I don't need a lot of paint. Okay, I'm mixing my transition color into that. And I probably need atmosphere at this point too, because that was my recent development on these shadow colors. So I got to include the sky color. I'm going to bring it all the way up into here. And now I'm going to put my highlight in here in order to get my appropriate lightness. So I'll start up here where I need it to be brightest, and then I'll start dragging that highlight down into my shadows without going back and forth too much. I'm going to try to stick to a mostly one direction pass, and then get the excess paint out of my brush so that when I go back up there, I'm not destroying my highlights quite as badly. I can always just add more paint, but sometimes just being strategic about which direction I go with my blending can be a good shortcut so that I'm not doing more work than necessary trying to get my bright colors to stay bright. So I start up here where it's bright, and then I gradually start dragging it down. And I'm seeing that maybe I have a bit less of my pink colored transition color in this patch. So I'll add a little bit more just to match what I've already got going here. And that. So I start up here. I'm going to gradually go back and forth as I work my way to the darker colors. And then once I get in these darker colors, I don't really jump back up into the lighter ones again until I get the excess paint out of my brush. Unless I want to add some of these little details. Here I can use the corner and make these little puffy doodads like that. I can throw in a couple little details into the highlight that way. Okay, I like the way that looks. I've got a soft gradient now, and it's allowing my close clouds to have their edges unobstructed by the background cloud that's rising up with the atmosphere color to create the distance. And so now, I'll get to this one with the same techniques. The last thing I'm going to do is try to complete some of the stuff down here on the lower part of the painting. And then we'll move to trying to look at some of the paintings you guys have been working on. What do you think, Dwayne? Do we have the ability to open up some pictures on the computer?
Definitely.
Okay. We can manage it. We're newbies here. We're newbies doing it without Ben. Ben.
So I've got one question here.
Yeah, shoot.
After finishing the painting, how do you protect the paint from peeling and bubbling?
Oh, yeah, great question. Well, peeling and bubbling is something you run into a lot with things that are exposed to abuse or weather or are painted on a strange surface. I will never run into that issue putting acrylic latex paint on a canvas. It's just not going to happen. But if I'm putting it over the top of another very different paint, well, then maybe that's an issue. So the answer to that is really just reading manufacturer labels. Sometimes they really go into depth about that. Over thinning paint can create problems. I haven't had it happen a lot. It just happens sometimes. You over thin paint and it starts to spread apart, or the adhesion isn't as good. That stuff can happen. But unless you're working on an exterior where there's abuse, you wouldn't see that on a canvas. When I'm outside on a mural, it's the old-fashioned finding the appropriate primer for the circumstance, using a bonding primer, something besides the paint. Just don't go directly with paint to a surface that has where you have any doubt about it going on another material. And you can see manufacturers' recommendations on what paint is designed to stick to. That's probably as much as I can speak about on that, because I'm constantly using the internet to find the answer to that myself. Sometimes I get surprised, and it's a with a constantly evolving industry coming up with new products. It's not a problem that goes away. You just have to try to do as much research as possible. Ask around people that have done the exact circumstance that you are embarking on. Okay, I'm just creating more of these gradients as they go down. I kind of like this. This is fun that I have a little bit of a bright hole going through this cloud. I wonder if it would be cool if I put a distinct separation in this. So what if, I'm just thinking, what if I had this bright line goes up here, then it comes across here like this. And I'm starting to run out of paint, so we're forced to move on to the next part of the show once my paint's gone. I'm not going to torture you all with an hour of mixing again, like I did in the first one. So I'm just making a bright path that zigzags just for the sake of interesting composition. I'm going to make it go back this way, like this, come this way, and then I'll fill this large shape with smaller shapes. A concept I use a lot in my artwork is building large shapes out of smaller shapes that are built out of smaller shapes that are built out of smaller shapes. A pattern that you see all over nature, and it's really helpful to try to employ that same principle in your work. You get the large shapes figured out. Let's say you're trying to draw something you see. Look for the largest shapes, then look for the next set of shapes just smaller than that are inside of those smaller shapes. Work from largest to smallest. So when I'm building clouds, it can help me to work the same way, because the immediate things that my eyes seem to stick to are the larger shapes. When you look at a picture at a glance, it seems like the larger shapes create the attraction. It's like, oh, interesting composition, I'm going to look at that. It's the larger shapes. Then as you get closer, the smaller shapes don't disappoint. So that's my philosophy on creating interesting composition. So right here, this was for the purpose of creating the larger shape that will hopefully make an interesting attraction at a glance for someone to look closer at details when they see this shape in the clouds that looks like it's kind of split apart. Hopefully it does. We'll work on it.
We just hit the hour mark.
Okay, that means it's time. We've got this technique coming along. It's looking good. I'll put a few more.
Send me the email again, Joe.
info@muraljoe.com. That's
And we
it.
got a comment saying, I want to see Joe create a spooky Halloween painting.
Oh, we can do that.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
And then one more comment Jacob had, shouldn't there be more atmosphere color on the lowest clouds? Question.
Oh, very good. Very good comment. Thank you. Yes. The answer is yes. And so thank you for pointing that out. That's something that I haven't done and that I should do. If I want to get the most depth out of this picture, then I have a layer. It's anything going far away. That's what we're adding atmosphere to. Anything getting further away, the more atmosphere I add, the further away it becomes. So this is a layer that I'm trying to make the perspective of us being under it. It gets further and further as we go down, down, down to the horizon. Therefore, I want to start putting atmosphere color on that. So thank you very much. Jake, did you say that was Jacob?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jacob, for reminding me about that. That is a very valuable insight on here. I'm going to put atmosphere color all over this. And very helpful pattern, very important to get that in there. Maybe a little bit in there. Anywhere I see clouds getting further. So this maybe just has a little on this cloud. See, I'll grab some of that, put it here. Then as it gets closer, I have less and less, not as much in there. So as it gets way back here, we're going to start seeing more and more atmosphere like this. There. Even with just that little bit, look at the difference that makes. Just a little bit, we immediately have distance. Most powerful tool for distance is atmosphere, if you ask me. In my opinion, I think atmosphere does it better than any of the other things. You can change the size, make things smaller, make them more blurry, but atmosphere immediately pushes something back. If you have the atmosphere established in your picture so that it's understood to be atmosphere when someone looks at it. So it really helps to set the stage first. Have your atmosphere. Oh, I got to go the other way. See that my highlights need a gradient. So I'm going to put more pressure on the lower part of the brush now to get my highlights to be sharper edges on the top, softer edges underneath. And that's what makes the highlight pop down through the shadows like that. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. This painting is almost done. We're just going to do one more after this. So we're going to do next Tuesday. Okay, next Tuesday, same time. We're shooting for 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. If I'm late, don't get too angry with me. I'm doing my best.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
That's it. Yep, that's the old favorite. Okay, I'm leaving it there for today. I'm very happy with the way it's starting to look. So I think, the things I'll be doing on the final lesson is making my judgments. Now that I have the picture to look at, I'm judging, is the composition good? Does it need slight adjustments? This is where I make all of my slight adjustments. Nothing really huge, but can I add more atmosphere here, less there, more color there, less, things like that. maybe some kind of an anomaly, something unusual, a cloud that's shaped like a whale, perhaps. So we'll see. We just got to figure out those final touches that make it feel like a finished picture. But I have to remember the purpose of this is Dwayne's idea. So it doesn't need to look like a complete picture with just the clouds. I just want to have good looking clouds to set the stage for the Kachinas that'll be in there. Okay, we're going to take a minute, flip over to my as soon as Dwayne gets the email opened up, we'll flip over to that screen and we'll take a look at, just go ahead and open one of the emails that have the paintings that we're going to look at, and then we'll do our best just to filter through that. You're going to be looking at my inbox for a while.
Just here. See what we got.
Okay, very good. So this one is, now I just want to see, did this one come with any message, any specific question we should address?
Oh, we should have looked at that.
I'm looking at, yeah, just take a
Go
quick
back
look.
real quick. Sorry,
Yeah, no
Jess.
problem.
Let's see. Here we go.
Newbie painter of only 4 months. Wow, very good job. Any advice on my painting? Okay, let's take a look. Okay, now, I would say use atmosphere, just like we were talking about. Okay, I like your perspective. Your perspective along this line, fantastic. You've got it getting bigger. It even has a very visible bend the way it doesn't change size here, but it does change size here. That's very good, believable shape, perspective. Love how you change the color on your sand. We've got wet sand, dry sand. So remember that you can change the color of shadows to get more believable. And oh, that's my HDMI cord messing up. Sorry. We've got a very touchy cord. Sorry about all the blinking. Well, we'll take a minute to try to get that in a spot where it won't jump. Yep, we'll just try not to touch it. Sorry, guys. So we've got very good colors on your sand. Now, I would just make these all a little bit less vivid because they're far away. If you add a blue atmosphere to it, it's a gray, blue, violet that you'd probably see on your shadows. And so add that to shadows that are back here. Add it to shadows that are along this foam. If you make that foam, you can look at any of my water videos where I'm painting foam. I use a gray, bluish violet to do these. It just helps you with depth, and that'll really improve the feeling of being able to walk along this beach and make it more three-dimensional for you. You can do the same thing with the grass too. Excellent work, love it. Thank you for sharing. I like your darker horizon. And so just want to encourage you and say, keep doing the great work.
All right.
All right, we're jumping over to another painting.
We got Leanne here.
Okay, thank you, Leanne. Always fun to see your work. And so Leanne says, finally took up painting last year with many interruptions after wanting to most of my life. Well, good job for finally doing that, Leanne. Okay, so I want to correct some things like the petunias. I want to show brilliant whiteness. Okay, let's take a look at it. The way you get brilliant whiteness is by setting the stage. So you don't have white that is whiter than white. You've only got the brightness of the light that you shine on the painting. So I just have to say, this looks awesome. Your shadows on these flowers look just fantastic. This looks like, what do you call these, lilacs? Are they lilacs? I might be wrong. Maybe something similar. That is just so nice. They look 3D. They're beautiful. But I understand your struggle with white. So with white, if you add just a touch of color, I'm going to zoom in on this to see. Okay, this color right here, that little bit of gold color that you have in the middle of these, you can use that in shadows, just a touch, to make these look translucent, like light is shining through them. And I'm talking about just a little bit. You might be surprised at what a slight change of color in the shadows on white can do. And so you'll often hear me talk about a rule of shifting hues where the hue changes color, but don't worry about that. On what that creates on a white is that the shadows maybe look a little bit gold sometimes. So if you add that little bit of color, you can get more of an ethereal look, like light is shining through these. And then you've already gone the right way, making bold contrast behind it. So if you make some of your flowers have a lot of that shadow, then they'll go back. And you are lacking right now the shadows on the flowers that are necessary to make the highlights look like they are very bright. So if you look at any picture that does a great job with illumination, it's a selected piece of the painting that is brightened with shadows all around. So when all of these are relatively equal in brightness across the flower, we lose the sense of a highlight. So don't be afraid to add plenty of shadows to multiple flowers in order to make the lighter ones look that much brighter. Then think about, perhaps, you don't have to, but maybe just a strategic decision, make the fence darker so that the whiter is brighter in comparison with it. So once you get a lot of dark colors around your highlight, then you shine a bright light on your painting. You find that it has that illuminated look to it. If you put highlights everywhere, they're no longer highlights. And that might be what you're experiencing there. But I have to compliment you on the fluffy shape of these flowers and the three-dimensional look. That just looks fantastic. I feel like I could jump into those bushes. They're really good. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, see what else we can find. Bear with us while we go a little bit slow. Ben's always got these queued up and ready to go. He's really good at his.
We got Mary here.
Okay, Mary, good to see you again. Mary, thanks for being here. And so Mary says, this is a scene from Central Florida. Man, I liked Florida when I visited. Made me want to live there. I'm not saying I'm going to, I'm just saying, really liked it. Okay, thank you for sharing this. Excellent depth. First thing I see when I look at that is a beautiful gradient going up toward the horizon that shows that kind of blue, violet, gray that happens when blue sky reflects off of something such as water. You've got it on the horizon, and you could add. Now, when I was in Florida, I saw lots of humidity, so you could afford to put it on these trees because the shadow of these trees is almost equal to the shadow of this very close tree. So just like I added it on my clouds, you could add it on these distant trees and get a lot more depth out of those, and it would go back to the same layer. It already looks good. It already looks far. It just looks like a very clear, non-humid day, and you can strategically add that cloud of humidity for depth. So an option for you to create more depth is to add that to this back layer, and then this tree will pop forward. And then another thing you do on tree trunks, I always love to use gray for the very edges, just a little bit of gray on the very edges after you blend to the shadow. So you go your lighter color in the middle, excellent for making it three-dimensional. You might go to your darker shadow, then a thin stripe of grayish color can make that very three-dimensional by adding the suggestion of a little bit of reflection that's bouncing off the edge of that. So everything else in that picture, you know, I just think looks fantastic. It looks 3D. Your colors look very natural. Love the softness of the gradient. And that's hard stuff to paint, so keep up the great work, Mary, and thanks for sharing that. Okay, then we'll go to the next one. We're looking at the email here. And what have we got? Okay, here's an interesting one. Hang tight. Here's an interesting one from Matthias. Okay, let's see it. Cool. Oh, man. Yeah. I love when I see a genre of painting that I don't really do. So I love your flowing shapes and your hard outlines and well, they're not really hard outlines, but, you know, just a look. You've got a style in this that is very fun. I love looking at this. And so I'm so busy trying to reproduce the patterns I see in nature. Sometimes I forget the fun of manipulating it to get cool looking artwork. So I love the way you've messed with the lines and the shapes and the outlines. It jumps out and it feels fun. Okay, so things that I think you did really awesome is create believable light. The colors of the light and shadow on this, sorry about that HDMI cord. The colors of the light and shadow on this mountain, very believable. You've got a little bit of the blue sky showing in your shadows, excellent. I would go even more to get that to look like this is far away and your blue secondary, see the sky is a light, it's a blue light. And you could get a little more blue on this. And as always, it doesn't have to happen, but if you put that, you get a lot more depth. And so then you could put that on any of these that have a lot of color in the shadows. You can get that blue in there. I love the way you have the real colorful highlights, and then you have the soft highlights. So this is a great way to get a really interesting picture, is to have some light that looks like it's just soft and colored by the blue sky, and then some direct light that's really contrasty and orange. I love how you have the violet tone to your halo around the moon. Very believable light because of that. A lot of artists end up getting kind of a green around a moon like this, and you've successfully kept the natural color of the glow, and that's awesome. So keep up the good work again. I love it. The only suggestion I would make is try to get some blue color in those distant shadows, which you've already done to a good extent, and it looks great because of it. All right, we're going to go to another one. We've got time for just a couple more. Let's do 2 more.
We got Lynn here.
Okay, Lynn has sent a picture. Ooh, this looks like a good one.
Yeah.
Here, let's take a
Help
close
on
look.
painting work in progress.
Oh, I see. I was trying to read.
How to get depth in water and correct colors on person.
Okay, very good. Okay, with people, I might flip out to our other camera to show you a portrait that I'm working on as a visual. And so to get colors on a person, it's just like the clouds. I'm going to use my little arrow again so that you can see. We want to have plenty of color. Anywhere a shadow meets a light, that is where the magic happens. So it's not the exact right color that you use for the skin overall. It's all in the transition. So I want to point out a few areas where you're getting an unnatural transition. This on the chin goes from this dark shadow, which is fine for a dark shadow, but as it gets lighter, I'm seeing an absence of red color. So you want to see this it does have it here as it goes further, but you want to see it immediately gaining color as the shadow lightens. So as the shadow gets lighter, an overall pattern, you want to see a little bit more color. That all by itself will make all this skin tone look more natural. And so you have with skin tone the effect, just like the clouds, the bright areas of the skin take in the light and shoot it out of the edges of the shadows. And so you want to see that color in between light and shadow, and the paint mixing is what removes it. It's not because you did something wrong. It's because the paint doesn't keep it. It removes it when it mixes. So this border between shadow and light, you just want to see your reddest color. It doesn't mean it's red. It means the reddest color. The most red is right between this shadow, would be right between the shadow and those highlights. Now, I talked so much about that, I forgot the other things that we were looking at. What was the other?
The water, the depth.
Oh, the water. That water looks so fantastic. Very realistic. Okay, if you think about the parts of water, all you have to do is, if you want to add depth so that it looks like you're looking down into the water, think of your underwater color. If it's just black, there's not a whole lot that I can think of to do, because this really looks like a good reflection on dark water. But the color would be added in the dark spots. That's where you have the underwater showing through. So if you added whatever color you want into all of these blackest, darkest areas, then that's where the underwater shines through the darkest part of the reflection on the surface. So all of this reflection, beautiful. All that light gray, blue, violet, whatever you call that, beautifully done. It starts gaining the underwater color wherever it hits your darkest areas. So you might be surprised what just a few dabs of a colored brush can do in these dark areas. You might love the way that looks. So try it out. Keep it dark. You don't want to put bright color in there. Keep the color dark. So I'm going to flip over to the camera and go ahead and go to camera 2 for us. I'm going to go camera 3 for us. Yeah, that's the one. So if I show you this painting, this is a portrait I'm working on that I showed in the past. It's just the only portrait that I have in my studio to point to. So the way I get natural looking skin tone. Now this is different lighting. So, you don't want to just copy these colors, but the pattern here that might be helpful is look how between this shadow and this highlight, I have the most red. This color has the most red. This is my wife and my oldest child, my firstborn daughter. And so this was a picture that just really got me, a photo we snapped, and I altered the clothing and the colors. But the point of this is showing you how moving from highlight to shadow, I always have added color. And if I want the skin to look like it's really illuminated, I might put more of that color. If I want it to look more calm and not as lit up, then maybe I put less. But it always has added color in between the shadows and the highlights. Everywhere you see shadow and light, you'll see some color in between that has to be added back in. And it's usually the most red color because skin has blood beneath the surface that makes that color when the highlight glows out of the edges of the shadows. Okay, we've got time for one last. Do we have any more on the email? Do we have any more paintings waiting to be looked at there, Dwayne, or are we ready to call it?
Let's check it out. We got a well painting here by Daniel.
Oh, let's check that one out. We got time for this last one.
This is a blue well. I redid the surface of the water almost 10 times.
Okay,
It's a challenge. Here we go.
Man, okay, let's check that out. Let's blow this up. That is cool. That is really cool. Okay, thanks for sharing this. I love how you have the similar to the watercolor. This tail looks distant because of how similar it is to your atmosphere. This is the atmosphere color. And then we go over here. This whale looks huge because even though it's sideways, it has gained all of this contrast. That means this is a lot closer to me than this over here. And that makes this whale seem huge, that just a slight bend of its body would change layers of the painting. That's a very well done effect. And so love the surface of your water, love all the caustics on its body. Looks awesome. Everything looks good. I already forgot what you said. What was it? Remind me, Dwayne, what we were specifically.
The surface of the water.
Yeah. Okay. I can help you a lot on the surface. Right up in here, this is where you want to see what's outside of the water. And so you can just block out your above colors and start putting them in the shapes of your waves in your brightest color. So just like on the last painting, I said, put the underwater color in the dark spots. Same thing here. Put your above surface colors, whatever you imagine them being, put them in your light spots. And don't try to blend them too much. They don't need to be blended much. They just need to be there because there's a kind of a phenomenon with the water where it makes sharper edges when we're looking out of it than when we're looking into it. But we can talk about that another time. But all you do is take patches of these colors that I see up here, whatever they are, bring them down into these spots without connecting them all together and make them just less and less as you go back. So you have less of the color in the distance because of the angle. It's where you're looking up and out of it that you see it. So you just have a very sudden cutoff here. And that's great. That's great. Maybe you could have like the aquarium look where you have the edge. And if you want to do that, you could just put a slightly different color, darker blue stripe on this and it'd cut it right off, make it look like an aquarium. But in order to get that surface to really look transparent, like a real surface, just get some of these colors, put them in your light patches, and I think you'll really like the difference that makes and make them smaller and less as they go down. Maybe only this far, like I'm going. You don't want to do them all the way back to your whale. That just wouldn't happen. You'd see them just where you're looking upward. This is such a fantastic picture. I love it. It's magical. I like that picture. So thanks for sharing. We're gonna kill it there. We can go back. My legs are getting old. I was crouching down looking at the computer, so I got to hobble back over here. Okay, so we're going to do this one more time. Thank you so much for joining on the part 4. We've got part 5. We'll finish it off. And like I said, we'll be making all the decisions to make this look good. So look at muraljoe.com if you're interested in purchasing downloads or in subscribing just to view something for some amount of time. You can unsubscribe at any time. And so you can get more information about that at my website. And also, it's very helpful if you remember to subscribe to my channel, and really helps the growth of the channel. Helps me a lot. Means a lot to me. So that's really all I have to say. I really appreciate you being patient as we work through our technical difficulties here and helping us to make a really good resource for people in the future. Thanks for tuning in from all over. What a privilege to have you coming in from all parts of the planet. It just is a huge honor for me. So we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks a lot.